Hey guys, how you doing today? This is Gilbert with Interactive Utopia, and today I'm gonna be explaining to you a little bit about a project that I'm working on, where basically we are taking a user input via voice, and then we are processing that voice, getting the transcript out of it, and based on what the user says, then we are going to be generating a dynamic URL that could be used in various different cases. In my scenario, we're using it for an application where it's building forms and setting up appointments, things like that. So we're just generating the dynamic URL to then like pre-fill the form, if you will. So let me just show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. So last time, and I'm just gonna refresh this. Last time on our last video, we worked with the Whisper API from OpenAI, where basically, we say something, gets recorded, then they process it, and then they're gonna send us a transcript back. So if you need a little bit of information on that one, just go back to the last video, take a look, and all the information is there, and the code is on GitHub. But now we're gonna build on that, and we're gonna be again taking that input and generating a pre-completed URL or a dynamic URL for the user. That way he can kind of click on it, and then it takes you to the pre-filled form. It can be used in different scenarios, but that's kind of what we're using it for at this point. So let me show you an example. Let's just go hit start recording, and I'm just gonna say something real quick. I need to have a message sent by Gilberto Cortez with an email of save@interactiveutopia.com. Okay, so this is pretty much the transcript that we get. Again, you can look at our last video for a little bit more on that. It's just basically getting it's taking the speech and creating text out of it. And then this is the JSON that I get back, that we get back from ChatGPT, which is another OpenAI API. And then based on that JSON, we can then generate the URL. That way we can click on it, and as you can see, it's taking me to a contact form with the name and email already pre-filled, which is basically in the URL. So you got to set up the page also to take in those variables, to get variables, but that should not be as complicated. You can see here again the URL that it's created on the site, on the console, and then the JSON that we get back. So let me show you how we do that. Okay. So we're gonna go over to Visual Studio Code, where we have the code. And basically, from last time to this time, all that I did as far as HTML is adding this div. It's just a little bit of text telling you what it does, but the important thing is this 2 p tags, which is basically what we're using to place the content on. So you just got to remember, do that or change it, or whatever you need to do with it. But HTML, very minimal changes. The majority of the changes are going to be on the JavaScript, and of course we're going to need the backend PHP to handle that. So the majority of this code is from last time. The new code, it's gonna be right here, I believe. From here all the way, that's quite a bit. From here to here. So let's go through the new code. Basically, I'm creating a couple new functions. The first one, we're sending the Whisper, the first one, I'm sorry, this is the one from last time. This is where we send the information over to Whisper. That way they send us back the response, which is the text of what we said. and again, I kind of explained that last time, so you can take a look at the video from there. The second function that we're going to be using, which is, I guess, one of the new ones, it's that we're sending the transcript that we received to get analyzed by ChatGPT. That's just an asynchronous request. So we take the text that, well, we did change, I guess, a little bit the function for send whisper, because we are calling the send transcript analysis function in there now, and we're sending the text that we received. So we call the function here, and then it's basically going to start this over here, and then that's going to start another fetch request, sending over via post. You can do get, you can do post. Post, I think it's a little bit better for this type of cases, and we're sending it to that PHP file, which is transcript_analysis.php. We send the content, we make sure that we get a response, and then the one thing that I'm doing with that response is, I'm displaying it on that p tag. So I just use stringify to convert it into a string, and that way I can display it into the p tag. But also, I kind of display it, but at the same time, I need to generate that URL that we need to provide to the user. So we take that JSON that was received from the response of the fetch that we did, and then we are going to call the generate URL function. Okay. So that's where we get the response variable from, just to clarify. Once we get the response, then we call this function down here, which is the generate URL. We're taking the received data, or the JSON from the analysis that we sent over, and then we need to generate the URL. And there it's just a little bit of JavaScript, kinda. We're setting a base URL. I'll explain it in the PHP file, but there's certain variables that we get back from the JSON, so we just kind of adjust them and work with them to generate the URL. But let me show you the PHP, because it's going to make more sense in a second. So on the PHP, we've kind of worked with it a little bit last time. So about, you need to get your API key, you need to save it into your file, and that way we can use it in the future. So as far as the code, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a cure API call, so that we can then get the transcript analyzed. Okay, so let me show you how we're going to be doing that. Okay, so in order to analyze the transcript, again, we're going to be making the call to the OpenAI ChatGPT API. We're going to be doing it using curl. I do have a video from before where I kind of go through this information a little bit more in detail, but I'll try to go, I'll do a quick overview of it. Basically, what it's going to do is we are going to get the variables, or in this case, in here we have like the API key stored, which we're going to be using down here on the headers when we're setting the headers for the communication that we're going to do. So basically, we need to get the API key, we need to get the endpoint. There is some information on the ChatGPT documentation, where you can get that information. So for example, right now we're using this API endpoint, which is the version 1 that /chat/completions. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code, you can see that's the one. So it really depends on what you're using. You can also select the model that it's going to be used. You have ChatGPT 4. You can look at the prices. Let's see if we can find the prices over here. Overview. Where in the world is pricing? Well, basically, the way that it works is the ChatGPT 3 is more, it's cheaper than ChatGPT 4. Just trying to find the pricing for you. So ChatGPT pricing, I guess API. Here we go. So the 3 you're looking about, it's not even a penny. And then when you're using ChatGPT 4, it's costing you 3 pennies. So you can get a lot more messages sent with ChatGPT 3 than with 4. It's just it's supposed to be a little smarter. ChatGPT 4, I guess it depends on what you're using it for, but 3.5 it's good. I think it's good. It's good. It's fast, so it should not be a problem. But I'll put the link in down below. That way you can kind of take a look at it and do your research in that area. So let's go back to the code. So again, JavaScript is going to send the information, then it's going to receive it. Once we receive it, I'm saving it basically in a variable, which is transcript. What this is doing is it's checking to make sure that it's sending the information, and if it's being sent, then we save it as a transcript, and then if there's no information, then we set it as null. That way down here we can check if there is a transcript, then run the code, because if there's not, then we got to do an error. In this case, I printed the post variables to do a little bit of debugging, but that can stay away, and then we're just echoing some JSON, which is the error, sending the error back. So if there is a transcript though, what we need to do is we need to create an array which is going to have the information that we're going to be sending over to ChatGPT. In this case, we need to give it the model, and then we are going to be giving them the prompt, if you can say. There's going to be 2 prompts that I usually give. One is how we're going to be setting it up. So in this case, we let him know that he needs to analyze the transcript, it needs to extract the information, what we wanted to extract. We want it in JSON. We don't want any additional information. We just need that JSON, because we're going to be processing it. If the user doesn't give the information, then we're just leaving a placeholder in there, like an empty placeholder. And then we give it more detailed instructions, like if you're getting an email, make sure it's a full email. It might be not formatted correctly, so make sure you analyze that. And then we even go a little further and give them what the allowed actions are, what the allowed types are. So yeah, and then we just again give him more details on how to do it. Basically, things like use naked for multi-word instead of using spaces, because we're going to be creating a URL with that, so we don't want to have any spaces. So we just give him, whatever we want back, we're setting it up. And then this area right here, that's where we're sending the transcript that we obtained from the request that was sent. And then the rest of it, it's just curl request, calling the, we're encoding the data, we're sending the header, we're sending the API key, we just send that information over, and then we're going to be saving it as the response. If we get an error, we gotta show it, and if not, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna get that response, and then pretty much because when you get the response, you get like the amount of tokens that you got, the ID number, blah blah blah, so a ton of information of it. But we're just needing the answer, not all the other information. So this is how we get that information. In here you can see, like, if there's an error, it's going to show in there in that array. But in this case, we're going for the actual result, and then we're just echoing that result. Again, it's in JSON format per the request, so we should be printing JSON. Once that gets printed out, then it's going to be sent back to the JavaScript. Let's see where that happens. So right here. So again, oh no. So once we receive the analysis, then that's when we send it to generate the URL. So by here we are already obtaining that JSON from ChatGPT, you know, with like the action and everything in variables, and I'll show you in a second the information. I think I just show you, but I'll show you more in detail. And then once we get again back to this area, now it's going to be a little clearer, hopefully. We get that data that we just received from the PHP file from OpenAI, and then we are going to be generating a URL. So the first thing, we got to give it the base URL, you know, domain you're going to be using or whatever. And then the second thing is we're going to take the type of action that the user wants, or let's say the type that it's going to be handled, because the action is different. So depending on the type, if it's an appointment, then you know it's going to go to appointments.php. If it's a report, reports.php, and so on. So in here, you know, depending on the type, I'm putting a page that it's going to, you know, whatever page is going to be processing that response. The one that I showed you was for the contact page. I'm giving different options because, well, on my other project I do need more options, but in this one, that way you can see that you can do more than just one thing. You know, it's dynamic, so you can do it however you want. So we get the type, or you know, we're gonna be getting the type from here, and then we get the action now. So it's either create, which is a new one, or edit, which is modify. Okay, and then we also need to it's called deconstructing. So we're deconstructing the JSON data that was sent over to us, and basically all this does is it takes the keys from the JSON object, and then it just makes them into variables. So that way, you know, there's a variable called type now and first name and all these ones, and then we're setting it up so if it doesn't exist, then its default value is just an empty string. So it's just a really clean way of doing it. This is a little bit of error checking, so making sure there's an action, making sure there's a type, because if there's not, then you know you don't know what you're going to be doing. And then once we get like that, those values put together, then we got to put the actual URL together. So we take the base URL that we provided, we go to the type URL array, which is this one, and depending on the action that is provided by OpenAI, then you know we're gonna select it from the array, and that's gonna give us the page, you know, like contact us.php. Just a little bit of URL encoding, and then in here, the first thing we got to do is we give it the URL, we give it the page, then we need to give it the action, you know, new or modify or whatever it's going to be. Once we have the URL, the type, which is the page that it's going to be, and the type of action that it's going to be made, then that's where we can provide the actual information. So you'll see in here what I'm going to be doing. This is basically the code that's going to add it to the URL. So it's going to do a loop of whatever parameters you want it to be. You know, like I wanted to check first name, last name, email, all that kind of stuff. And then that loop is just going to add it. If it's not empty, of course, you know, if it's not an empty or string like over here, when it doesn't exist, then it's going to add to the array. This is like the and sign to do the encoding, the key, which is, you know, the key for the JSON, and then of course the value that it's whatever it is. So first name, you know, like in my case, first name Gilbert, last name Cortez. So you know, it's going to be creating or adding it to the URL. So at the end, once that URL is put together, all we need to do is echo it out, print it out, and that way the user can like click on it, and it's also going to log on the console. So as we had it over here. And then what I was saying about the JSON that we get back, this is right here, the JSON that we get back from the PHP. So as you can see, it gives us the action, which is to create, the type, which is the contact, and then, you know, my first name, last name, and the email. And with that, it generated the URL based on the function that we just talked about. We can click on it, and again, you can see up here the URL and then how it added everything together. And then basically we just manage it and add it to the contact form. So I'll show you that really quick if I can find it. There we go. So in here, everything that I did, you know, just a new array, pre-filled data, or I call it pre-filled data, which basically could be the name or the email. Make sure that it's set. If it's not set, then we're setting it to an empty string. And then just down here on the actual form, for the value, we're just printing out that value from the array. And if there's nothing there, it's just going to be empty, so there's nothing to show. So it kind of works out. And yeah, so it works out, you know, because if you go to the page and you click, you know, on the actual link without the information, you'll still get the form, and, you know, it can be filled out and all that. Okay, and that's basically how it works. So I hope that gives you enough information that for you to kind of do it on your own. If you have any questions, please do let me know. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and give it a big thumbs up. And you can go again to interactiveutopia.com and you can send me a message if you have any questions, or you can send me a text message, a WhatsApp, and it will be my pleasure to assist you. Okay, well, thank you again for your time, and we'll be seeing you next time. Have a great day.